How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Adrian here for Digital Dojos, and I want to kick off by wishing you all a happy new year in 2025. I know this holiday season can always be hectic and there's a lot going on, but I appreciate you being around if you've been around, whether it's been for the last year, from years ago, or what have you, or maybe you're a new viewer stumbling upon this video. And with the new year, I figured why not talk about the tech that I used in 2024. And I want to caveat this, rather than just focusing on all the new tech that came out or all the hot tech or AI stuff, I just want to talk about tech I actually use, whether it was old or new, came out in 2024, came out 10 years ago. It doesn't matter, which some of these products came out longer than 10 years ago. So I just want to talk about the stuff that I use. As somebody who used to do this for a living, content creation, and primarily reviewing the latest and the greatest technology stuff, I try to keep still nowadays on the bleeding edge of tech, despite not doing it, quote unquote, for a living. But I think the value of when I started doing this was to kind of share and showcase products I found useful, products I found cool. And I think a cool way to recap a lot of that is just look at what I used in the year and what really stuck with me and what was consistent in my overall usage, and hopes that, might be insightful to you. And tech isn't always just about the latest and greatest gadgets, but it's about what works for you and what fits in your daily life and budget and, ease of use, and what you find makes your life easier. Because at the end of the day, tech should be this thing that enables us to create, to make life easier, to improve and enhance everyday today things. So with that, strap in because there's a lot to cover, but let's dive into it. And first and foremost, I thought I would be remiss if I didn't start with talking about the thing that I quite literally carry with me every day, and that is a reflection of, the main piece of tech that I rely on a consistent basis. Now, I had this iPhone, this is 16 Pro Max, at its release in 2024, which I think was at usually around like October. So it's not something that's been with me in my pocket the whole year, obviously, but I have been an iPhone user for the last couple of decades. I've had the privilege to be able to upgrade year after year after year. And coming off of the former 15 Pro Max, what I can say about the 16 Pro Max is this. It is a great overall phone in the sense of it's a great camera, it's a great specs, has good, decent hardware. You're going to get great video out of this. You're going to get great photos out of this. You're going to be able to use this phone and reliably, rely on it for all your day-to-day usage, whether it's web browsing, calling and communication, what have you. But here's the thing, at least for me. I did not need to do this upgrade, and I know I've been saying that more and more year after year as of late, and I get it anyway, which again is a privilege. But this is a year where I think the specs, the new hardware, the new features, I should say more so, just didn't really hit for me and were more of a miss, in my opinion, when I look at it holistically in terms of the usage. I had this phone since its release. I told myself I was going to do a full review after I've tested it and more thoroughly used it day to day. I wanted to wait for the Apple Intelligence to be fully rolled out so I can get a sense of those features, because Apple touted how this phone was built from the ground up for Apple Intelligence. And I can still say, after all this usage, just hasn't stuck with me. The additional little button here that they added that, originally they had the action button they added, which you could use to quickly access your camera, but then they added, I don't even remember what they call this button now, this touch capacitive button to quickly launch your camera, and you can use it to zoom in and zoom out and change kind of tones and all these different things with your camera. It's cool. It's great. Yeah, it's a little bit more convenient because it's lower and you can use it to snap pictures with one hand and things of that nature. Hasn't really stuck for me. Yes, I use it. It's nice, but I didn't need it, and it hasn't revolutionarily changed how I take pictures and use the camera now. Yeah, it is convenient to be able to do certain things, but I think in terms of just quickly accessing the camera, the action button gave you a physical way to do that. Obviously, you can toggle the home button and home screen to do that in iOS now, but it's not a killer feature in my opinion. It's a nice to have. Now, the other big touting was the Apple Intelligence, was the software actually. The ability to use your camera to identify what building this is or what restaurant this is or things of that nature. Haven't really used that much. And look, I know 2024, if anything, was probably the year of AI. We have all these crazy AI products and ChatGPT and all these things getting better and better, but Apple, I think, just didn't really hit the mark with it. Even the other features that they touted, like the AI smart notifications, I think, are still a pretty big miss for me. Like, kind of is confusing at times with the context, and it bunches alerts kind of weirdly, and it can be misconstrued at times. It tries its best to kind of summarize what people are saying, and sometimes it does a decent job. Other times it's actually, I just prefer to turn it off. And I think that's what I will be doing going into 2025, and just having, the standard alerts. I just don't use Apple Intelligence enough. And I'm sure it's only going to get better, and I'm sure they'll come out with crazier and better features in the future. But as of what it is right now and how they pitch this device to be like built for Apple Intelligence, I don't use it personally. All right, next up, in terms of the category that is content creation, making videos like this, making videos for my other channel that I started in the year of 2024, I want to talk a little bit about the equipment that helped me do that. First and foremost, we have the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. If you followed any kind of YouTube vloggers or YouTubers in general, this is probably like the camera of the year. Even though this came out, I think, the year prior, if not before that. This is the latest edition of the Pocket line from the makers of DJI, who make drones and many other, video accessories. This is a camera that really just kind of took the content creation by storm, in all honesty. It's because it's portable, it's versatile, and has really great quality. This can shoot in 4K. As you can see here, it's a super small form factor in the camera standalone. It has a built-in gimbal, so you can use it to get really steady and stabilized shots and just kind of cool effects here. It has a flip-out touchscreen for you to see as your viewfinder, and you can record in both portrait and or landscape. So you can get your TikToks and your Instagram reels and all that stuff. You have this little joystick to control it. You can control the pan, tilt, zoom. Has a lot of cool features, and it shoots in really high res, great quality format while being this portable. I picked mine up this year as I wanted to get more into like lifestyle and vlogging content again, and I'm very, very surprised, and this has been one of the main rotations of cameras I use, not just when I travel. I filmed my whole Japan travel series vlog on my personal channel on this, so if you want to check out some of the footage there. But in general, like, this could be a camera you use just for your standard YouTube videos. I got the Creator Combo in particular, which is a little bit more expensive, but it gives you accessories like the ability to add attachments to hook up things like tripods or a longer battery, or you can get more advanced accessories from third parties like this, which allow you to attach this and use it so that you can stick this to magnetic, like poles and things like that to get really creative shots. Overall, this is just a really versatile camera that I think if you are into content creation, and I will say particularly like if you're somebody who wants to get into like vlogging or things of that nature, this is a camera you will not be disappointed in. It's just a really versatile overall form factor, super portable. You can easily take this on the go, put it in your pocket, put it in a bag. You can get filters for these things. You can get like it comes with a widescreen filter in the Creator Combo. And the reason I really like the Creator Combo and recommend spending the extra like a couple $100 is you get the wireless microphone that pairs with it that really offers you superb audio. Even if you feel like you're not somebody who would use like a clip-on external mic, I think it's still worth it to have it as your backup microphone in certain situations, even though this has a decent microphone built in as is. Overall, really great camera, something that I know was really popular, very cliche, but for a reason. Now, in terms of other cameras I've used in 2024 and continue to use, my Sony a6400 is still my main kind of talking head camera. My overhead camera, which you see me kind of pan to every now and again, this is my Sony a7C, and it has just, I think this is the kit lens for me to use for like zooming in on overhead shots and whatnot. So I have a couple lenses I've used with both of these cameras, both Sony mirrorless cameras. In my opinion, very reliable. I've just always shot on Sony in the recent years, and just really, really great mirrorless cameras that I've been using for my main video setup here. Now, in terms of audio, the Shure SM7B, the microphone I'm using right now, I get asked about this a lot, especially like nowadays in this hybrid environment. I use this on my Zoom calls. A lot of people like the sound of the audio, and this is, just a standard Shure SM7B that a lot of people, again, is just a cliche mic to go to. If you've seen any podcast that started in 2024, they're probably using a Shure SM7B. It's just so known in the industry for like a very classic, known, good quality microphone. So whether you want to get it for videos or podcasting, or you just want to upgrade your audio and your interface as a whole, it is on the pricier side, 300 plus, but you can typically get it on sale. It's still very affordable in that range, but you will need extra accessories. So you're going to need an interface of some sort. I use a Scarlett preamp. I have a cloud lifter attached to this to kind of raise the audio and give it a little bit more boost. So there is additional stuff you have to get. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been this year or last year, they came out with a Shure SM7 VB or some sort of model number that's a little bit more cost affordable, and it's USB, if I'm not mistaken. So it gives you just a more plug and play interface. I'll be sure to link to that as well if you're interested. But tried and true, and it's what I've used for the last couple of years. Lastly, I want to talk about my capture hardware and accessories. And that's all branded by Elgato, or I guess technically now Corsair owns Elgato. I'm using the Elgato ring light. I'm using the Elgato key light. I have my Elgato green screen right behind me here that you can't see. Elgato low profile mic arm for the Shure SM7B. They're a reason they're known in like the streaming / content creator space. They just make really convenient products, from the Stream Deck to other forms of stuff that just make life easier for creators. Yeah, it's a brand that I definitely invest into heavily. So the Elgato series of stuff also runs my capture cards, from my 4K Cam Link to my built-in capture card on my PC, so on and so forth. All right, next up, let's talk gaming and video games. It's a category that I don't know if you can say invested is the right word, but spent heavily in this year, as you can tell, as somebody who is a video game collector and appreciation of both retro and modern tech. Video games is something that, again, I just spent a lot more time in from a tech standpoint category this year. I launched my Dojo Gamer channel, which is an extension of this channel to focus specifically on video game related content. And I want to talk about the consoles I use this year in particular, and my ranking in terms of the most used to the least used, and my kind of insight into the consoles as they stand. Starting off with number one, and that was none other than the Sony PlayStation 5, which you can't see because it's just ever so slightly cropped out of video here. There we go. So I'm very fortunate enough to have every modern console. Currently, I have 2 PlayStation 5s. I have the Slim Edition, which I picked up this year. Just have that variant. That typically lives, technically now down here in the studio. My digital version lives upstairs in the living room. And then I have the Series X, which I've had for the last couple of years. And then I also game on the Nintendo Switches, which I have multiple. I just realized my green screen filter is still on. That's why that looks black. And then the PC, or the computer, which is natively, I identify as a PC gamer, but have invested a bit in the consoles as of recent years. So PlayStation 5, by far the most used console overall probably this year in terms of pure gameplay. And I think it's a little bit of, I've always been a Sony fan overall. PlayStation 2 was one of my favorite consoles growing up, but just the exclusive titles that Sony has and being able to relive a lot of those classic titles made me gravitate more to the PlayStation 5. To this day, when I look at both, the PlayStation 5 still feels like a more next-gen console to me, and maybe that comes down to the controller and how that works with its haptic feedback and triggers and things of that nature. But by far, playing exclusive like Stellar Blade or Astrobot this year, which won Game of the Year, really just made me gravitate more to get games on PlayStation 5, exclusive or not. So whether it's been NBA 2K24 or many other games, PlayStation 5 is by far where I spent most of my time as a gamer playing overall throughout the year. Next up was the PC, or the computer, and I mean probably by like a close margin if I had to compare like overall time spent in games played, because it's natively where I'm at the most, and it's my most powerful hardware by far, which I'll talk about later on in the computer section. And that's also just because the PC tends to have a lot more in its overall library, because it has, Microsoft library, it has the Steam library, you have so many different types of games you can play. There's the indie genres. There's just so many marketplaces to play games. Not to mention, in my opinion, I just tend to get games at a better price and just more on sale digitally through, all these sales that tend to go on things like Steam. Next up, which is surprising, was probably the Nintendo Switch. And that's probably for a couple of reasons, despite how old this hardware is. And this year, at least 2025, we should be getting finally the next generation of this console that is now so old, yet still so powerful in so many ways. I think a lot of the Nintendo Switch comes down to the exclusive titles and IP that Nintendo has that really can't be replicated elsewhere. We're talking Mario Kart, Mario Party, all these games. This was the third most popular in my ranking thus far because of the party games and the party console that the Nintendo Switch is. I got my Nintendo OLED Tears of the Kingdom edition this year. I got this modded Switch setup this year, which I threw a transparent case on. It has a Pico Fly mod in it here. So that was a really cool project I worked on this year. And it's allowed me to just, it's a console that I play with friends whenever they're over. We're hosting people over. It's an easy go-to, like, casual console. And the OLED model that I picked up this year also allowed me to just play on handheld in a way that, I get to experience that really great screen and quality. So yeah, I think I picked up 3 Switches this year in particular, despite their age. And last but not least was the Xbox. The Series X really only got usage in the later half of the year, in the latter half, I should say. And that's because of the Call of Duty release. For whatever reason, I just prefer to play Call of Duty on an Xbox. It's just maybe one of those things that I'm nostalgic for, despite having it on the PC. Really Game Pass. Like, that's the only other reason I played Xbox now and again this year, was from random, Game Pass titles that were only on there. But for the most part, when I looked at a Game Pass title that I wanted to play, since I have the Ultimate Game Pass subscription, if it was already available on PC as well, then I would just gravitate towards playing it on PC, thus why PC ranked higher. Now, let's talk a little bit about retro gaming and some hardware that stuck with me or that I used a lot in 2024. I picked up a lot of retro consoles in 2024. I have all the fantastic N64s back there. I'm sure I picked up a bunch of other consoles that I can't even remember right now. I have some new analog consoles coming in. But by far, my favorite console, if you do not know, is the Nintendo 64. A lot of it is nostalgia around the first console I ever had, and it was like mine, so to speak. But I also have been going for the complete collection in 2024 of the entire North American and Japanese library. And when it comes to the North American library, I'm less than 7 games away from completion, and I should be completing it around the same time I started this time last year, or technically this year. In January of this year, in January of last year, 2024, I decided to go for that complete collection, and then I will be completing at least the NA portion a year later to get here. But I invested a lot in Nintendo 64 is what I'm trying to say, and this is a product of that. So this is a modded Nintendo 64 in a couple ways, mostly aesthetics, to be honest, in this particular case. So here we have this clear, transparent, which I'm a big fan of when it comes to tech, third-party case that I got and installed. Within that, we also installed a third-party tray in here, so this allows me to play both NA and JP games all in one, just this 3D printed tray that's in there right now. We have the memory expansion slot in there, but a couple other accessories. We have this EverDrive 64 that I installed in this custom clear transparent case as well, because I originally had it in black, and you can see I have a custom label there for the Dojo Gamer channel, as well as a custom sticker here on the front, because I had to basically just salvage the board from the original housing here. If you don't know what an EverDrive 64 is, essentially my roughly cut out, as you can see here, allows me to either connect this via, this is USB for debugging, or you can see there's a micro SD card right here on the side. And this micro SD card essentially has every N64 game on it right now, the entire 64 library to match the physical library that I have, and allow me to play on native hardware. So it's just convenient. I don't have to kind of physically use the carts all the time and risk damaging them and so on and so forth. And it's just all in one. Like, things like this exist nowadays and they're pretty cool. They are costly for what they are, to be honest. Obviously, there's a whole emulation world that you can use, but for me, it's cool because it allows me to play on OG hardware, and it's an actual like N64 cart for the modern age. And there's something about like taking retro tech and making it a little bit more modern that's always fun for me. This also supports Bluetooth controllers I can hook up to this, and then on top of that, I also picked up this N64 this year. This is the Smoke Gray N64, and this has another mod in it here, and this is the HDMI mod. So this is a mini HDMI in here, and has a custom board installed here that allows for HD compatibility from a console that's this old. Now, the idea was to take this board as a whole and swap it with that clear one, and it's still something that I want to do, but I did these projects separately at the time, so when I picked this up, I think I might have gone this before I did that. So yeah. And that leads me to the next retro item in terms of gaming that I've used a lot this year, and that is the RetroTink 4K. This is a piece of technology. It's a upscaler, for those of you who don't know what a RetroTink is. Essentially taking that retro resolutions, the quality of the video that back then you were playing through composite video or, S-video or SCART and all these different technologies back in the day. These weren't meant to be played on like 720p, 1080p, let alone 4K TVs. But with things like upscalers nowadays and hardware that you can buy, you can play native hardware on modern TVs and scale it more proportionally with a lot of crazy tech that goes behind it that I am not equipped enough to talk about. Thus, I buy products like the RetroTink 4K, which are kind of like the gold standard and like the luxury option for upscalers. You can get really cheap ones, but I really want to invest heavily in something that's going to improve my setup and my overall experience and is versatile. I can grow with it. With the RetroTink 4K, I can hook up a lot of my old retro consoles from my Dreamcast, Nintendo, SNES, NES, Xboxes, so on and so forth, into the RetroTink 4K and play it on my 4K OLED TVs, as well as use the RetroTink to capture content. I hook it up into my Elgato capture card, I scale the video up, and I can play in 4K resolution and capture retro games playing on native hardware. It's a crazy setup, but it's a really cool piece of tech that I honestly don't utilize to anywhere near its max potential. There's just so much you can do with it. There's so many upgrades and filters and things that you can throw on it and things that you can adjust, from the scan lines to all this other stuff. I'm definitely a noob when it comes to this, but I'm really happy I got my hands on one of these this year and more excited to dive into it further in 2025. All right, last two categories I want to address here. Daily drivers when it comes to computers. So when it comes to computers, I really have two kind of subsets of where I use my computers. It's either here at the home office and studio, or it's at my office for our company Network Right, our IT consulting business. I'm in one of those two places almost 7 days a week. And with that in mind, my main drivers have consistently been throughout 2024, either A, my MacBook Pro M1 that you see right there behind me. That's been my daily driver laptop. I've had that since I upgraded from my previous MacBook, and probably going to be due for an upgrade maybe later this year. Still runs fine, but again, M1s have advanced year over year. We're now on the M4 chips, but for the most part, that's been old reliable. That is a laptop I typically use to go in between the office and home. And traditionally, in the start of 2024, that was my setup. That was my main computer I would use at work. And then if I needed it at home, I had the option for it. However, this year I made the switch to having a desktop at the office because I just prefer desktop setups as an individual. I always have. And I invested in a Mac Studio. This might have been 2023, actually, personally, that I then ended up using at the office all throughout most of 2024. So the Mac Studio with the M1 chip was actually the main computer that I used at the office. I think it was the M1 Pro or whatever the Mac CPU you can get on that is. And that wasn't until the newer Mac Mini came out this year at the latter half of 2024 that I upgraded to that. And in my opinion, has been one of the best values in tech period that you can get when it comes to a desktop computer, Mac or PC. For bang for buck, the baseline model, the specs, the performance you get out of it, the form factor, you could argue the new Mac Mini is portable. You still need a monitor and everything else, but it's amazing what they've been able to do in that from an engineering standpoint to a performance standpoint and just a value standpoint. If you're looking for an affordable desktop Mac or you want to buy a Mac for somebody in your life, the Mac Mini, if they have all the other accessories already, is a really great value. And that is now my main computer I use at the office. Now, with that means I took the Mac Studio back here, so that is the main Mac I have right now at my workstation desk. And then my PC, my Windows PC, workstation, gaming PC, whatever you want to call it. This does it all. I edit on this. I play video games on this. It's primarily the daily driver when I'm here at home if I'm not on the Mac. Then that is running the AMD 9750 16 core like CPU. I built this was Ryzen 9. I don't know if I built it this year. It might have been late last year or early this year. I honestly don't remember at this point. But this is running that 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM. Has like over 10 terabytes of NVMe storage in it. Has a NVIDIA or GeForce RTX 4090 in here from Asus. It is a pretty beefy build overall, and since I got it, I've made like micro upgrades over the time. So I added a 10 gig NIC card in there for networking. I've added additional fans and things of that nature. It's all housed in this NZXT Flow case here. But yeah, it's been tried and true. It's ran reliably for me. It's a power horse of a machine and can handle mostly everything I throw at it. And I'm sure I'll either, upgrade it slightly in the year to come. If not, maybe replace some key components as newer, cooler hardware comes out in the future. All right, and the last but not least category here, another category of tech that I've been heavily investing into throughout 2024, and just in general, is the whole smart home area of products and making my life, my partner's life, things a little bit more easy, convenient, and just, nice to have here in our apartment and setup. And it was a big goal of mine when I moved into this new apartment in 2023 to really smart home it up from the networking to the home lab setup. And I think in 2024, we've done a lot of that. So I want to talk about some of the products that I've continued to use. First and foremost, the brains of it all. Everything is running on a Raspberry Pi 4 running Home Assistant. Home Assistant is just custom OS and software that allows all of my smart home products to talk to each other and gives a central hub for them to not just talk with each other, but build automations off of each other. So I don't have to worry about different ecosystems and different apps and being locked to it. Home Assistant kind of centralizes all of that. So when it comes to that, the main lighting source, the main smart home category that I think is the most common smart home category is smart lighting. And for me, that's continued to be Philips Hue. Every light bulb in this apartment is actually Philips Hue. It's one of the big priorities I made when we moved into this place. And it allows me to adjust the lighting, the brightness. It allows me to change the scenery and do things like this throughout the place and, kind of set different scenes throughout. And it also just adds a layer of convenience. I basically never interact with a light switch. I always use my voice assistant through Amazon to control all the lights, if not just smart routines to control lights. Lights turn on at sunset if they're not already on. Depending on the time of day, they adjust their color temperature. If we're away from the home, they turn off to make sure we don't, overusing electricity or when we're traveling and things of that nature. Just so many different levels of convenience. You tie that in with the things like smart sensors and things of that nature. It allows me to then take that to the next level, integrate things like if I walk up the staircase at a certain time of day, lights turn on and then automatically turn off after a certain time. I have a lot of different smart home sensors and things that I've yet to even unbox just because I've accrued a lot of them in 2024 as they were on sale for things like Black Friday and the holidays, and a couple of other brands outside of Philips Hue that have stuck out because I understand Philips Hue is a more expensive brand out there. Nowadays, there's so many alternatives, LifeX, Govee, so on and so forth. While they're more affordable and they've gotten better and better over the years, I've just been with Philips Hue for the last 5-6 plus years, so it's made it easier to grow overall in that ecosystem. But with that being said, Aqara is another brand that I've used a lot of. I've used a lot of their sensors from their door and window sensors. I have things like their vibration sensors, their water leak sensors, all these other things here that I've used. I have a lot of their hubs throughout the place. They are my kind of smart home security system. They just make a lot of cool different products that I've relied on pretty heavily. But I will say one product that I've relied on the most from Aqara is actually their U100 smart locks. A smart lock is one thing I really wanted when I moved into this apartment. We have 2 entries into our apartment. You can come in through the home studio / office here. You can come in through the main floor. And I really wanted that to be equipped with a smart lock. I tested out the level lock, which I reviewed last year. Wasn't a big fan of that. Ended up going with the U100, which I think has since gotten a couple upgrades to different models. But the U100 has just been so reliable, really great battery life, really great features, super responsive, and just a really great overall smart lock. So if you're looking for a really convenient smart lock, you maybe are interested in Aqara, already in the Aqara ecosystem, the U100 I can give my full stamp of approval. I haven't tested, I think, the new U200 or U300, but I'm sure it's equally as great if it's building upon what is the U100 because you have a fingerprint sensor, you have a keypad that you can use, super reliable, pretty durable overall, and just a big fan of it as a smart lock as a whole. Lastly, in the smart home category, maybe not quite smart home, but smart tech, is my Oura Ring. It's a piece of tech that I've continued to use throughout 2024. I might have got this earlier than 2024. I definitely did because this is the older generation, but it's something I've consistently wore every now and again. And that's because as somebody who's a big fan of like standard analog watches, I don't typically wear my Apple Watch Ultra as much nowadays. And since I rotate through Apple or watches in general on a daily basis, the Smart Ring or the Oura Ring has allowed me to track stats, track things with sleep and steps and things like that, even when I'm not wearing my smartwatch. And it's just something that for me is more easier to wear, convenient, even sleep with because it is sleep tracking versus like a watch on my wrist. I understand wearables might not be for everybody, especially things like rings if you're not used to wearing them as accessories. But for me, it's been more low profile than like a strap or a watch or what have you. And just super easy, super convenient, super great long battery life because there's no screen or anything like that. I will probably upgrade to the latest generation because I'm 2 generations behind at this point. Not a fan of their whole subscription model thing. Thankfully, I don't have that on this model. But in terms of what it does and what it offers, if you like to kind of see the stats around your body and health and those sort of things, then Oura is one of the definitely top brands out there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that is a synopsis of a lot of the tech I used in 2024. I know this was a long one, but it's always fun for me just to kind of look back at some of the stuff that's stuck around, and whether it's new, I bought in 2024 but came out years ago, like the Nintendo 64 or what have you, and just also see what's stuck. Obviously, there's a lot of other tech I use in my day-to-day life, but some of it is used for specific cases. Some of it is for more niche hobbies or what have you. I want to really focus on the true tech that I think has stood the test of time in terms of quality, reliability, what I use on a day-to-day basis, in the seen and unseen, whether it's the light bulbs in my house or the ring on my finger or the consoles that I play in my free time. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far, shout out to you. Wishing you the best in 2025. As always, like the video if you enjoyed. Consider subscribing for more content to come in the year of 2025.